Okay, everyone, this is Gregg here. We are coming live in just a second. Let me get us up and running on the stream here. Gemini, you can hear my voice, I'm sure. All right, everyone, bringing us live now. There we are, I believe, anyways. This is my first time starting the show with the new OBS setup with the stream studio and everything. But I think that worked. Anyways, here we are. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Kieran, our guest. I'm saying that right, Kieran? Yeah. And local union organizer, anti-racist action guy, protester, kind of, politically active and all that, out in Minneapolis, St. Paul, the whole area. And I wanted to talk to you today about union organizing and about the importance of it and about a lot of pieces of this puzzle. So the crowd knows, me and you have been connected for, it's actually been quite a long time on various social platforms. We've not interacted really much. I think the most we interacted was I was looking to try and see if we ever had any conversations I could hark back to, but it was like we commented on one of Daryl Lamont Jenkins' posts together. It was like that, so. But yeah,
Okay, right.
so.
Yeah, yeah.
You've been doing this type of stuff, be it protesting, union work, anti-racist action for a long time. And kind of one of the first things I wanted to talk about was if I read your Facebook right, you've been doing this since '88. Yeah?
Yeah, or further back even. Yeah, I was politically active as a teenager in the '80s in Minneapolis, and was involved in some, direct action anti-war stuff, and also with a crew of anti-racist skinheads that ended up founding the first anti-racist action chapter. So we organized ourselves to fight against Nazi skinheads, and then broadened it out to try and include young people beyond just the skinhead scene.
Yep. Yep.
And yeah, I've been doing stuff ever since then, really.
So these days, you are president of your local union, which is the CWA 7250, and that's the Communications Workers of America. Am I getting that right?
You got it. Yep.
All right.
Yep.
So
So we're part of the CWA, which is one of the larger unions in the country. We're a mhm.
yeah. So one of the big things I would love to kind of talk about with the audience here is you ran for president of your local union chapter there late last year, early this year. I don't remember. I don't like from what I read. I didn't see when it ended, but you put in that extra effort not to just be a member of your local union, but to actually take over and start working on the direction of the thing. What what led you to want to actually be in that position?
Yeah. Well, I don't know that I really did want to be in it, but I wanted to see some changes happen in our local union. There's a number of, the unions are unfortunately still very much bound up in kind of conservative, slow paced, and ineffective ways of doing things, in my opinion. And so I think it needed a shot in the arm. When I say we, myself and a number of other people kind of informally had been organizing in our local union for many years. A number of us were stewards. I had been elected chief steward 6 years ago and ran for a second term. So I'd been a chief steward for 6 years and helped organize a steward force in the workplace that I was in. But I felt like that in order to make some of the changes that were needed, and it sort of being inspired by the uprising in Minneapolis, I felt like it was time for us to push things further. And the way I saw that was possible in the near term um, was to run for the office that I did. But it was sort of it was kind of a collective effort in that there's a number of people who've worked together over many years who are involved in our local and who have been pushing things forward in on a bunch of fronts. So I kind of wanted to continue that, but then continue it with maybe a little bit extra boost to it. Like I said, sort of inspired by the uprising here.
Yep. Well, that leads to one of my first real questions about the politics of it, because So on the official media for the CWA 7250, you guys had posted some of the stuff about May Day and the events and all that. And for the most part, when I think of the May Day celebrations, I see a lot more lefties there than I do righties when it comes to just on the streets holding up their big red signs. I see a lot of the various leftist organizations organizing that stuff. And so you kind of were right there on the nose on the fact that a lot of the union people I know that are in kind of, we'll call it managerial organizational positions in the unions that I know of locally here are much more conservative in nature. So are you getting any pushback in terms of how you're starting to run this from the conservatives, or are you lucky? Do you actually have one of those unions that's full of lefties, or I just don't know.
Well, the first of all, the May Day march here that you're referencing, was endorsed by a couple dozen Twin Cities union bodies and workers organizations. So, there was a lot of different unions that endorsed it, as well as a number of immigrant rights groups and social justice organizations and community defense organizations. So there really wasn't like that many left parties or whatever, if you will.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean that it didn't have a fairly left wing stance or presentation. We marched for workers' rights, immigrant rights, stop police brutality, fight climate change and end the Line 3 pipeline project.
Yep.
And justice for frontline workers. So it was definitely a program that resonated with a lot of our members. We see ourselves as what we call like a solidarity union, which means that our main sort of ethic and framework for what we see the union doing is an organization of solidarity, both for our members inside our union and also broader to the whole working class. So yeah, there's certainly a wide variety of opinions within our local union, like in lots of other unions. I think that part of the reason maybe that I was able to get support from a lot of different corners was that I wasn't pushing support for, say, the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. I was really emphasizing the power of our, self-reliance on working class organization and the need for us not to wait for any saviors to come along, but for us to organize ourselves. And I think that actually resonated with a lot of people who might, vote lots of different ways or not vote at all.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that's not to say there isn't some disagreements and differences, and some people probably find my stances too radical, but I try and ground it in everyday language and in a common sense approach to the problems we face.
I think it's interesting where you come from, being that, kind of your origination in my view of where activism started with you, beyond anything else you might have done younger, was, coming out of the skinhead punkish scene to fight racists, like that whole world there, and then getting up to, leader of the union you're in. It's an interesting trek to get there, but how have you kept going this long? I get asked this a lot for me because I'm 13 years in, and that's to me nothing compared to you. Like you've got double me easily, right? And I already know most of the people I started out with are long gone and either bored with this or kind of retired from activism to go have children and live off somewhere in the suburbs. And you've kept going for a very long time, and do you have anything to give us on longevity here? Like, how do you keep going? Burnout, everything else.
Right. I mean, I think part of it is, probably part of it is I'm a crazy zealot, and I don't know how to do it otherwise. I think, like anything, you kind of try and ground it in your life, and sort of a lot of it is about thinking strategically about how can you have an impact, how can you change things, so that you're always thinking about, what can I do in this situation? And certainly as I've gotten older, my points of reference have changed. So unlike when I was a teenager, I'm not hanging out on street corners,
Yep.
every night like I used to.
Yep.
And also I'm have raised kids, so that puts me in more situations where I'm with other parents or with dealing with schools or dealing with other issues with families. And then also being in a job long term now, it used to be where we you'd quit a job every year or so,
Right.
and that wasn't your main focus. But I've been at the job where I'm at now for 17 years. So I just figure if I'm going to be there, I might as well start, making relationships
That
and,
stability
seeing
helps.
what, yeah, seeing what can come out of it. I think, um, the strategy thing is important though too, because, people do get tired, and I think it's important not to sort of cut off ties with folks, because like one thing, social media is bad in lots of ways, but one of the things I think it's been good for is keeping me connected to a lot of people from different generations of struggle. And,
Mm.
not everybody's going to be a kind of like, a zealot, but I
Right.
may find stuff like when Trump happens, or when George Floyd happens, or when COVID happens or whatever, people get interested in politics again, or get interested in organizing again. And that's important to keep ties, I think, with people that you've been in struggles, or been in organizing with in the past.
A lot of it's just down to, you've been lucky to find some stability, which a lot of us in the activism side just don't do. A lot of people get sick of the exact grind you described, that being an activist usually doesn't
Yeah,
lead to much stability. It usually leads to, you're either somehow self-employed, which
right,
really means just looking for money every month, or you're
right.
changing jobs every year. And so congrats on the stability of a job there. That's great.
Yeah.
That's a huge help. For me, one of the things that really helped in my life, making sure that this kept going, was I actually met my wife at a protest. So it really, the whole family
Mhm.
is about this. Our kids
Yeah.
were at Occupy with us when they were, 4 and 6, I think so. Like
Mhm.
it's a
That's great.
family thing. It's how we live, right? And I think that's helped a lot for
Right.
a lot of people who aren't around people in their close circle that they grow up with or something. It doesn't. I don't think I don't think it's as easy as it is for someone who's surrounded themselves by it. I think that's part of why I've survived.
Hmm.
So you brought up, you're in
Yeah,
Minneapolis.
I hear you.
Yeah, you're in Minneapolis. You're in
Hmm.
St. Paul, that whole area, and you've been there over the last year and a half or so of all of this George Floyd mess that's been going on, and
Hmm.
now the Dante Wright and everything else that's going on there. So
Hmm.
I've spent some time out there over the last like 4 or 5 years with I'll call it contract work with someone who just likes to bring me out and brainstorm. But it's led me to be able to
Hmm.
be out there for some of the events and be in George Floyd Square. And
Yep.
there's a feeling there when stuff is going on. So I was there the night of the actual verdict, and in the square, which just
Hmm.
became a party. I don't know if you made it
Hmm.
down or if you were, far too busy there, but I went from the square, which was an absolute party, over to Brooklyn Center, which was still, the speaker truck. Everyone knows the speaker truck. That white speaker truck is outside of the police station. They're all surrounded by National Guard, and they're still just screaming their heads off. They're out there
Hmm.
doing it, and it was a really it was a strong juxtaposition, right? The party over here, I mean, there's people on mics, live, rapping music to the crowd, and then there's the people still yelling at the National Guard over on the other side, right? And so you've been there for the entirety of all of this.
Hmm.
How is the feeling on the ground right now? Like, what's going on? Is everyone just waiting for the verdict, waiting for the next trials? Like, where are we on the ground there with all these events?
No, I mean, I think there's really been an ongoing heightened level of activity, ever since George Floyd was killed, and even those struggles, or the uprising itself, was kind of built on the shoulders of other struggles that had happened in recent years around the murders of Jamar Clark, for instance, and Philando Castile, which sort of made the Twin Cities a big hub of activity, in the earlier Black Lives Matter movement. And so there was a lot of people that had been sort of trained, if you will, in organizing and protesting and in resistance. And so when George Floyd happened, there was this, critical mass of people that had already been part of stuff. Plus, there was this mass outrage at something so grotesque happening, in our community. And the reaction was really powerful. And I think that in many ways, it's still echoing now today. And a lot of what you see going on in the Twin Cities, what you mentioned, the fact that George Floyd Square still exists with barricades around it, that the police are not welcome in.
Yeah,
That's an important thing, that's happened. It's almost been a year now, and that George Floyd Square is still being held by the community. And there's still protests going on in Brooklyn Center against the murder of Dante Wright, which has brought in a whole other wing of young people and people from the north suburbs into the struggle. So to me, it feels like the uprising never really died. Like it definitely peaked, but there has still been a level of heightened activity, and it doesn't feel like, for instance, the city has been able to reestablish their kind of normalcy with the police back in power. And to me, that feels overall liberating. And I think it does for lots of other people too. I don't want to, act like things are great or perfect here. They're just like they are everywhere. People are struggling against all kinds of things, racism and sexism and poverty and police brutality and you name it. The pandemic, of course. But I do feel like there is a lot to build on here, and that people are building on it as we speak.
One of the things I've noticed over the last few months, as I've gotten to travel out there, has been, the kind of same thing that I'm used to seeing in these types of events as they, go on, over the years. That on the day the trial started, I had a good idea of who the about 7 or 8 people who would show up there at 7 a.m. when I did outside of the place were. Shout outs to Chaz, shout outs to Mark, shout outs to DJ. I had an idea of who was going to be on the ground, right? And watching every event, there's kind of that core group that has come together that really is, there's 20 or 30 people that are just always going to show up to these events. And there's all the others who cycle in and out of the ones they can make it to. But one of the things that I've noticed is there's about half of them who are literally just there to be on the street, to be protesting, to be doing the work. But there's another group of them with, what is it, CPAG, a few of the other groups who are now starting to work on local groups to get legislation passed, to start actually getting some of the reforms they want. Have you been following any of that, or what they've been doing off of the street there?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, what's happened is because of the power of the uprising, issues that weren't sort of seen as realistic before have suddenly become much more realistic in terms of massive changes to the police. And I think there's a few different approaches towards the police that are sometimes in competition with each other. So, for instance, there's one idea that the police department should be dissolved and a new department of public safety be created. There's another idea that the MPD be put under what they call like community control and would be governed by an elected body from the community. And then there's other folks that I think I would put myself more in line with that think that, we can't really, that the police are there as an oppressive institution and that there's not a way to really change that. So our main goal is to build up our capacity, to weaken their capacity, and to build up the capacity of the community, of the people, in contrast to the police. And so all those ideas are out there and sort of cooperating and competing with each other, and other ideas as well about what to do with policing in the Twin Cities. But that's making it that's, I think, proof that there's been a big rupture here when those kinds of discussions can be happening involving thousands of people.
It really is. And I'm right there on your side with this one. I don't believe it's a fixable system. I believe it exists solely for its oppressive nature. We know it was founded on utter and pure racism. So, I mean, it was literally the policing that we know today in this world started with the Americans deciding that they needed some kind of a force to go hunt down escaped slaves. Like our police grew out of that. And from there, it just, I don't know that it ever got any better. That's that. I mean, I'm pretty far along the ACAB route at this point. So I got into an interesting argument online today with Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, who turns out to be a far right bootlicker, who was unhappy with my explaining no good cops in a racist system to people, and started complaining that sounded like an artist's idea of it all. And if you don't think that, works and that no one should be a cop, then well, no one should run for Congress because it's a corrupt system. And I'm like, yeah, thank you for finally starting to get it, guy. You're getting there. You're starting to figure this out.
Right.
But
Yeah.
so I'm 100% there with you on that one. I've been making really good friends with the people at 10 Demands, and I don't know if you've looked at their stuff, but you can go to 10demands.org, and they've got a whole list of the exact demands for abolishing the police and replacing them with community activism. We've had them on the show before. We've done a bunch of shows on mutual aid, which I think is one of the big pieces of that whole communities working with each other. We help run the community aid system here in our town. My wife spends days of the week, like entire days of the week, just working on mutual aid here, and it's not a paying position. We are just being activists for the sake of being activists at this point, and I think it's worth it. Yeah, 10forjustice.com. I think you would love it if you took a look at what they've got, because they've really written up short, succinct, single, 2 paragraph kind of descriptions of everything we talk about on this side, and I'm a big fan. So yeah, all of that. One of the things that I hope happens, or doesn't happen, I should say, in George Floyd Square, which I've been really happy with people on the ground kind of being cognizant of, but I'd love to say it on stream here too, is, I was at Chop, depending on, which side of the fence you are on there, up in Seattle, and one of the more I think, sad, personally, to me, things that happened was the amount of artwork that was done around the space to really, enhance the space with what we were feeling. The amount of just sides of buildings too, big boards, covered in just beautiful art. When the city came in to clear everything out, they took all of that and they stored it so they could set up a little museum run by the city to show everyone from the outside world how progressive the city is. No one related to the damn protest or related to doing the art or anything else had anything to do with that. The city just came in and basically stole the art to make themselves look good. And I'm really hoping the people in Minneapolis don't let that shit happen. Because George Floyd Square, like, there's that feeling, the first time I walked into it, there's just this air there when you walk up to the memorial that just, it's an energy in the space that just really, you feel it. You feel the strength of what happened there and how bad it was. And I really hope someone there has a plan for that artwork and it's not the city just kind of usurping the movement.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that there was a ton of art around Minneapolis as well, right in the wake of the uprising, because basically every business was boarded up. So there was just a tremendous amount of art up everywhere, and it really felt like being in Belfast or something with just murals everywhere. I loved it, biking around, seeing all the murals, and most of them are all down now. There are some that are still up,
Yep.
including some, in George Floyd Square. But yeah, that is going to be a continuing battle over defining the city and the way it looks, and
Right?
what images are allowed and who owns them for sure.
So I wanna talk to someone who actually is running a union now, and I'm gonna ask you, totally telling me I don't want to answer that because I got people who will hate me because of my answer. But I don't think you're that guy. I think you're more than happy to get controversial. We have Biden as president now, right? And I'm no Republican, but I'm also not a Democrat. I don't really identify with this 2 party system, which is just also a false dichotomy meant to oppress us. It's 2 parties working together to make sure they stay in charge. But anyways, we've got Biden in power, and one of his big selling points on the way, into the presidency was how pro-union he was, how pro-worker he was, to try and get that vote. And he did get that vote. I mean, that vote came through for him. But I was told, as one of those types of people, what we can do, because we know he's not left enough right now, he's not progressive enough right now on these issues, is just get him in, get Trump out, get him in, and then we can work on moving him left. And I've argued for, months before and months after, you can't move someone left once he's already got your vote. Like, that was your power, and you already gave it, so now he just gets to do whatever. Where are you on your thoughts of this, being an actual union president during, this?
Well, I think, most of our members probably voted for Biden. I think a lot of people were really, sick of and scared of Trump. And I don't blame him for that. Trump was scary and I sure was sick of him. But I tried to warn people that, if you look at Biden and his record, three of the biggest catastrophes to hit working class people, the mass incarceration, in which thousands and thousands and thousands of young people, particularly young people of color, were locked up in the drug wars
The
and the
crime bill.
enhanced sentencing. The NAFTA bill, which opened up the so-called free trade and the maquiladora factory system in Mexico, and both built in this sort of um, you know low wage Mexican industrial um, factory system, and then also sapped a bunch of the Rust Belt of industrial jobs and union jobs. And then the Gulf War, and the Iraq War, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Biden signed on to all of those. He didn't just sign on to them; he was a big proponent of those three things.
There's
And again,
hours
those are
of
three of the
video of
biggest
him on the
disasters
floor
to
of
ever hit.
Congress, convincing the
Yeah,
Democrats to sign off
yeah,
on the war. He didn't just
yeah,
say, yes, I'm here. He said, everyone come along. And he used that power we've
yeah,
been told he
yeah.
has to get them to come along.
Mm-hmm.
That bringing everyone across the
Right.
aisle together for one thing. Yeah, my problem with him has always been that power he has to bring people across the aisle always seems to just bring the Democrats over to the Republicans. It never seems to go the other way. Like the
Right.
Patriot Act, the crime bill, you name it. You
Mm-hmm.
look at his record, and when he crosses the aisle to really bring people together, the bill that gets passed is a Republican-led bill. And
Mm-hmm.
it's tough with that record. It was, I wanted Trump out bad enough, but that was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do.
Mm-hmm.
Just in terms of like anything I've done politically, because his record is, to me, absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, he's like you mentioned before, he's a representative of one of the big business political parties in this country, so he tends to reflect, the views and the limits of whatever big business allows as a possibility. The fact that he's talking this kind of left rhetoric right now, different than what anybody who's can remember ever hearing, is because of the mass movements in this country, and it's because they're scared. There really is. I think last summer really scared them, and the weaknesses of the system were really apparent. And to me, it was a big learning experience for me too. And I consider myself somebody that studies this kind of stuff. But just how weak the system is, which doesn't mean that it isn't dangerous, because a wounded
Right,
animal can be very dangerous.
right.
But it's much much weaker than I had thought, and it made me think that actually some big leaps forward in terms of people power are more possible than maybe I thought in the immediate near term. And so I think part of the why Biden's in there is to try and reestablish um, a kind of authority within the state and within the society. And so that's why I think he's offering these kinds of and we'll see if it's
Half
rhetoric or if there's
measures.
even a little thing to it. Yeah. But in any case, it's not the change we really need, you
No,
know.
no, we are not there yet. We are not there yet. One of the things that I also wanted to kind of, get an understanding of is we have the right to work movement, which by movement I mean the Koch brothers funded right wing think tank ran
Right.
attack on workers. But yes, the right to work movement.
Mhm.
And then we, on the other side of it, have, the unions, right? And
Right.
I would love to hear from someone who is literally currently a president of a union why unions are important. What is your opinion on this matter? What does the union accomplish that you're not going to get in a right to work state where unions have just been kneecapped?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the whole idea behind unions is that, collectively you have more power. And if you have that kind of organized power in your workplace, then a few things start to change. One, management can't just be arbitrary and vindictive and sort of selfish in the way that they assign work, or the way that they discipline people, or the way that they fire people. The union has a way of, standing up to them and making it so that they have to follow certain rules, and that they can't just sort of um, you know, treat people sort of as disposable, parts of a machine. So you have some sort of recognition of some basic rights at work. And the other big thing is the ability to, you know, push collectively for demands, for what kind of, you know, what should this work be compensated for? What kind of benefits do we need? All these kinds of questions. And doing that together as a group is much more powerful than, you know, going in one at a time, begging your boss for a raise or something. Now, the problem is that even that doesn't do enough. And the unions, when unions first started off, they also had a bigger picture too. So they weren't just about defending people on the job, and they weren't just about pushing for better wages and benefits, but they were also talking about what kind of society do we want. And I think, you know, what I want to do is return that kind of discussion to the front burner of the labor movement. You know, we need to be questioning this whole setup because it's all, you know, against our interests, and it's not going to change unless we start talking about it and making moves. So I want to talk with other people in the labor movement who believe that as well. I think it's, you know, you only live once,
Right.
and I think now is a time when people's eyes are open and their minds are open. So let's start having real blunt, you know, honest discussions about what we're up against and what we need. And I just don't, you know, I just don't have time for the half measure stuff and the little breadcrumbs here and there kind of thing. Let's really talk about what we're up against. So just the short answer to your question is that, you know,
Yeah.
unions are there to defend your everyday interests, but they should also be there to fight for a better future.
I love it. I love it. You know, that's a very succinct way to put it. You know, just I never told you this when we were talking before, but I feel the need to say it now because it's actually pretty bad tonight. I had COVID at the very beginning, all the way back last March, so a long time ago. But I have one lasting effect, and it's I don't take in enough oxygen. So I yawn like about 700 times a day, and I'm never tired. I just literally yawn all day. So when you see me fighting off the yawns, it's every time we talk, you're going to see that. Nonstop.
Okay.
It is not you. I usually tell people beforehand. Tonight I forgot. But you know,
Wouldn't be the first time I made someone yawn.
I know. It's just I always feel bad because I know what the look could mean, right? But it just it won't stop. I can't. I'm hoping someday I get past it, but
Yeah.
as they
Not
figure out the long
right.
term kind of effects of this stuff and they figure out treatments for it, maybe I get that back. But right now, that's life. You
Right.
know, one of the things that I kind of wanted to feel out for me when I got into this, it was in my late 20s, early 30s when I first started getting really active and stuff, and it was kind of accidental at best. You know, with kind of the beginnings of Anonymous is where you know I come from, and if you look up kind of online and you watch any of the documentaries about Anonymous, like you'll see where you know where all that happened, right? But it was very explosive. It was I know 20 people who are trolling stuff online to a week later, I have 10,000 people waiting for me to upload another video to tell them what to do. You know, it was instantaneous, and I had no idea what I was doing. But it was a lot of young people, and we through our work over the next couple of years really activated, I think, a lot of young people. And I spent I've spent the last 10 years going to colleges every year talking to young people, trying to get them interested in activism and unionizing and local organizing and running for government and everything I can really do when I get to talk to them. But also in completely ignoring authority, including what I find the most fun is always calling out the authority of the college I'm at, and telling the kids not to pay any attention to them. You know, just you're really setting the right tone, I think. But you've been doing this for a very long time, and have you noticed lately that there's more youth coming in because of all these kind of movements out on the street, which isn't where we should be. We shouldn't have to be out on the street every single week because someone's been shot. But to me, one of the side effects that is something that should be looked at is a lot of youth seem to be showing up that wouldn't have without it. Is that what you've been seeing out there, especially Minneapolis?
Yeah, like so one of the areas, you know, we organize AT&T workers, and one of the areas that we organize is the retail stores.
Hmm?
And in the past, where we had union recognition in the retail stores in Minnesota, what I would hear a lot is that people would go into the stores, that they'd run into a lot of apathy or even hostility towards the union. And part of
Hmm.
that was because it was a sort of a sales job, involved young workers who weren't really, you know, didn't have any union background. And, you know, the sales environment kind of bred a competition kind of thing. But I'm finding that as we go into the retail stores now and talk to people and try and build, not just union members, but actual union organization in each retail store, that we're finding that people are much more kind of open to the idea of unions and actually excited about being in a union. And I think that doesn't have to do with my personality or anything. I think it's about
Right.
what's going on in the rest of the world, and that there's something in the air right now where people do want to be part of something that has their interests, that's and that they can participate in as an equal. So I've been finding, having
A
good
lot less
good
pushback.
conversations. Yeah, a lot of good conversations and people stepping up to get involved. One of the things we're trying to do is get a steward in every retail store. A union steward basically is a front line of the union who helps, answer questions and helps people organize around issues if there's problems at work, and also is in touch with the rest of the union and includes us into the issues going on in their location. So right now, when I got this job, there was only, out of 27 stores, I think there was only 2 or 3 stewards in the whole retail environment. So our goal is to get at least one steward in every store. And, we're gaining ground and meeting good people and doing some actions and stuff. So I'm excited.
That's awesome to hear. I mean, that's what I was hoping you would have to say. Like, that's the outcome I want to see from all of the youth starting to get more and more activated and starting to see that they can affect change. I think that real indifference of the '90s and even into the early 2000s was, it is just what it is, and now we've got that feeling of we're gonna fucking change it, whether you like it or not. And like that change in attitude has meant the world to me. I mean, just watching it happen. But you started
Yeah,
so much sooner than me that it was. I think it was way worse when you started in terms of just the low numbers of people interested or even knew it was going on. So it's probably way different for you now than it was back then.
Well, I think, the thing is that there's different waves of resistance, and I was lucky enough to be part of some good ones back in the 80s too, which people think of as a really conservative time, of course, because of Reagan and the first Bush and all that. But really, there was also this sort of like, vibrant underground youth scene that was, very sort of defiant and militant. And then sort of another one emerged with hip hop. So between punk and hip hop, there was some real good stuff back then too, I'll say,
Right.
although clearly it was in a minority in the rest of society.
A lot of people forget that, when they look back at, like, say, the Reagan years or any of that type of stuff and how conservative everything seemed to be on the surface, that one of the big things that, like, Reagan and his whole crew of people hated about Carter was that he tried to put solar panels on the White House and use that as a signal that we're moving against climate change and that we're moving towards renewables. And what's the first thing that Reagan does? Undoes all of that. Like day one, walks through the Rose Garden. Yeah, that all has to go. It's just there was a movement. There were people working this. I get the feel that we're a lot larger than we were back then, and
Well,
that makes
certainly,
me happy.
yeah, like you mentioned Occupy earlier,
Yeah.
and I think there's been kind of these waves of struggles in the last, you know, um, 10 years or so, because I think 10 years ago, we're talking about the Wisconsin protests. I don't know if you remember
Yep.
those, when the governor there made it, attack the public sector unions, and there was a big response. And, there was even talk of a general strike. I was involved in some of the organizing
Yep.
around that, and there was some pretty audacious actions that happened, that seemed and when I went to Wisconsin, and Minnesota and Wisconsin are quite similar types of states in a lot of ways. But when I go to Wisconsin, it just seemed like I was going into a different country. Just the
Yeah.
consciousness, the feeling in the air, the sort of excitement, and also the possibilities, but also people's fear of what was coming. All of that was just so much more heightened than across the border in the state where I was from. But I think, like you mentioned, Occupy came after that, and then other different struggles that have popped up. The Idle No More movement, the Me Too stuff, Black Lives Matter, of course, is extremely important. All the
DAPL.
different struggles against pipelines. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I think that each movement has been sort of building off of the last and sharpening our understandings and analysis, and also our tactical abilities. You mentioned the mutual aid networks that are so coming now.
Yeah.
And I think you're right that we are at a different moment than I've ever seen before in my lifetime.
Just having this conversation with you, I'm feeling a little more optimistic than I was before.
Good.
I'm starting to
Love
feel
that.
like the flow of things here. In the chat, which if you don't have the Twitch chat up because we're on video thing here, but one of the
Right.
users asked which union is more present out there. Is it UFCW or SEIU? Now I know I've met SEIU people from there, so I would assume.
Well, I think the question is which union is more present?
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay. I mean, I think both unions have some presence in the Twin Cities, certainly, and they both organize important group of workers. SEIU's workers tend to be, low wage, people of color, immigrant, and poor white folks who are in this security guard and the janitor.
Yeah, a lot of
Um,
janitorial work in the SEIU.
yep, yep. And so that's an extremely important group of people, and it connects them to a lot of different communities in the Twin Cities. And likewise, UFCW organizes a lot of grocery store workers,
Yep.
and again, a very multiracial union. Again, tends to include people at sort of the lower ends of the working class. So both unions have a presence here and have potential impact here. I would say um, none of the unions, though, including the union that I'm a part of, CWA, is doing yet what needs to be done, though. And I think there's a lot more that needs to be done. And I think all of the unions need to be challenged to step up, and to make to the power of the union in the hands of their members, and to really imagine a different kind of society, a different kind of system, a different kind of setup, and to really take bold action in the same way that the young people have, against the police
Yep.
brutality.
The a lot something that a lot of people don't know about the SEIU, which I like to call them out for, like in a good way. Like I like to give them props for. There were many anonymous encampments around the country and around the world, but many of them in America actually got their wireless internet provided by the SEIU. The union actually local voted on it and then provided hotspots for the internet. So like our media tent here in Boston, one of the hotspots for the media tent down in New York, the one in Cleveland, a few of the others. SEIU provided our internet, so we had internet at the encampment. And when you think about like unions getting involved, like that's the kind of stuff that they can do, which doesn't really affect their bottom line that much, but it means the world to that encampment. The other thing they did, obviously, was they literally sent their people to every one of our marches. So our marches that would have been 100 people were suddenly 5,000 people every time they put out the message. So thank you, SEIU, all over the country for all the stuff that they do. I would say that, my biggest problem with these unions having to be as strong as they are is that they wouldn't if we lived in a society that actually supported its working class. We wouldn't need these protections if it wasn't an exploitative system where the rich get rich by stealing wages from the poor. But here we are, so I'm very glad that they do exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. I think though that there's a lot of transformation that still needs to happen. I think too many of the unions accept basically accept capitalism as a given. And once they do that, then it sort of limits all of your potential about what we could be fighting for.
Put you in
And
a
so I think
box.
that, yeah, it definitely does right out of the, it's going to be hard enough if you don't accept capitalism, but if you do accept capitalism,
Right.
it really restrains you. And all of the big unions basically do. And that's a problem. Now they also say they want to reform it and change it and tweak it, but I think we need to start talking about a society in which all people have democratic control over their lives.
An
Not
actual like representation that
like,
isn't
yeah,
controlled by
like
money.
exactly. Like I think what if society, instead of being governed by these elite bureaucracies and militaries and corporations that you don't even have any say in, what if instead there was neighborhood assemblies and workplace assemblies, and community organizations of all different kinds and interest groups of all different kinds made up of regular people, I think that one, that we would be in a much less dangerous position, both in terms of the way that we interact with the earth and climate, and how we interact with each other
Yeah.
and other humans. And I think we have to start putting those visions central to what we're doing.
I think unions are one of the best people to fight that fight for us too. Definitely.
There's a lot of potential there. There's a lot of potential there, but it's got to be seized. It's got to be taken. And so I'd say to anybody that is in a union, try and get involved, and don't just, that doesn't mean just
Don't just pay
do
your
it.
dues and expect to help.
That's
Like,
right.
get involved in the union and
Get
what it's
involved,
doing and where it's going. And
and put your opinions out there and meet other people, in your industry or in your workplace or in your union, and start building with them. And don't be discouraged if your ideas aren't, sort of embraced right away, because sometimes it takes a while and takes some fighting, but it's good training for you.
so, one of the other things I wanted to bring up, kind of staying with unions, but moving to a completely different kind of thing here. Uh, during this whole kind of uprising that's been going on in Minneapolis, and sadly keeps getting new reasons to be re-empowered and kind of go back out to the streets and force again. The National Guard has come out, and they have been all over the place with Operation Safety Net. And I saw them even the last night that I was actually out on the streets over there in Brooklyn Center. They had the police surrounded by National Guard, and surprisingly, the first time I've ever seen the National Guard do one thing right, and that was 11 o'clock was the curfew, right? And everyone's got to leave the square and get away from here. This is a residential area, they were screaming. And they said all this like 5 minutes before 11, like disperse. And then, of course, out of the back of the wonderful audio truck you guys have out there in Minneapolis, they go over the speakers and scream, "We ain't leaving, do something." And I thought that was just great. And the National Guard's response to that was to hop in all their vehicles, get in a vehicle formation of a two-column formation, and leave. And I was like, yeah, no, that's exactly what you should do when you realize that your only other choice is attacking the people. And it was the first time I'd ever seen them do that. So I, one, don't expect them to ever do it again. I don't think they're going to learn from this. But you had a completely different experience with the National Guard and Operation Safety Net. Your experience with them was that they kind of took over a building that you have some say in. Can you explain what happened there to the audience?
Yeah, so like you were saying, this so-called Operation Safety Net was organized by the governor and local um, governments, the local police departments and the sheriffs, and backed up by the National Guard as a way of sort of integrating the law enforcement capabilities during the Chauvin trial for murdering George Floyd. And then, of course, during the trial, Daunte Wright is killed, and that produces this flashpoint up in Brooklyn Center, the suburb where he was killed. And so this Operation Safety Net basically is a militarized backing up of the law enforcement in the Twin Cities, who've basically lost a lot of their legitimacy because of their conduct, because of their violence, because of their murders. And so because the police don't have legitimacy, they bring in this militarized force to back them up. And so, like you said, there was, armed trucks and soldiers at all kinds of major
Everywhere.
intersections all over the Twin Cities. You would see them. I had a member of our union who described going to the grocery store and said she felt like she was in The Handmaid's Tale every time she went out to the grocery store or the drugstore, because there
Right.
they were, there's soldiers there, and just how we were supposed to just act like this was normal. So in any case, word got out that the National Guard was set up at the St. Paul Regional Labor Federation Labor Center building, which is sort of the coalition of all the unions in the East Metro around St. Paul and the suburbs. And our local is a member of both the Minneapolis and the St. Paul Regional Labor Federations. We have members and workers in both sides of the river, so to speak.
Yep.
And we were never consulted about this. And so we called around and talked to a lot of different union leaders and found that they hadn't been consulted either. And so we went over there to investigate what was going on and found that there was not just a few National Guard there, but there was 17 armored vehicles and probably around 50 soldiers. And they weren't just in the parking lot, but they were actually inside the building. and had taken over the building. They wouldn't let me in. And, our local, like I mentioned, is an affiliate of the Labor Federation.
Which means you're
And,
paying for part of that building, so you have every right to
that's
be
right.
there.
That's right. And so we tried to find out, well, how did this come to be? How did this come to be that they've just taken over our building? And we found out that one president of one local, that's affiliated, and now keep in mind there's dozens of unions affiliated to the St. Paul Labor Federation, but one
Right.
local had let them in and given them the keys and basically turned over the building to them. So we told them this was not democratic. This was not debated or voted on, not by our members, not by
That's
the
not how
unions, not
unions
even
work.
right. Exactly. So we challenged them, and we organized a little protest outside the building. We were chanting about Black Lives Matter, and we were also drawing, the history of the labor movement and the National Guard, which, if you know, that it's a very violent one. The National Guard's been
It
used
ends in
time and
murder
time again.
usually.
Yeah, time and time again to stop strikes, to bust up strikes, and including, shooting and killing people
Yeah.
doing it. So, so to see the National Guard turned over, or see the Labor Center turned over to the National Guard, is a pretty striking image when you know the history of the working class. Um, but I also want to make a point that I think is important, because a lot of people, the right wing, tried to say that we were really disrespectful to the soldiers, and that we were, kind of like that we did something shameful and really terrible.
Which
But
they will always do.
they will, and people have to know that and not fall for it. But I do want to make a point, though, that I and a lot of others who've been organizing here make a concerted attempt to talk to the National Guard soldiers. And it's not because the National Guard institution is ever going to be on our side, but the soldiers who are part of the National Guard, if you look at any kind of popular revolt, histories of popular revolts, law enforcement almost never comes over to the side of the people. They're just, and that by
Yeah.
dealing with cops and how
Oh,
they
yeah.
act towards you. But soldiers in any kind of popular revolt that really catches fires, there's almost always a break amongst the soldiers. And that's because a soldier's life is different. Their role in the society is different. They tend to come from working class families. This is only a part-time, they're not seeing this as their occupation for their lifetime, most of them, the overwhelming
Yeah.
majority of them. And they tend to still think like workers in some way, because they're organized like that in a way that's very different than two guys in a patrol car who've been given the right to kill whoever they want. They develop a different kind of consciousness. So so it's not just that the right wing is lying about us when they say that we were being disrespectful to the soldiers. It's that they're also trying to, they're not just doing it to make us look bad, but it also is an untrue statement, because our strategy should be to try and talk to the soldiers and to try and win them over to our side. And that's what, that several of us anyways were doing that night, was have conversations with the guards.
And in the end, you guys actually got them to leave the building.
Yeah, to the credit of this union leader who'd let them in, we gave him enough grief over the phone, and to his credit, he came down there and talked with us, and then went and talked to the president of the St. Paul Regional Labor Federation and agreed to tell the guard they had to go. And that's what happened. And, it was kind of a triumph. It happened pretty quickly, a lot more quickly than I would have thought. Within about 2 hours,
Right.
the guard had been kicked out. And that was a big victory, and it really stung the system. And it did for a few reasons. One, because they were really trying to present the guard as this, peacekeeping force that all peace-loving people should love and respect.
Yeah, they're in the
And
middle. They're
two,
not on a side. That's
right,
the thing they're
exactly.
trying to give us.
And the other thing was that, to be honest, the labor movement hasn't done enough yet in support of the young people out there in the streets. And this was like a concrete example of the unions really taking the side of the communities that have been under the gun. And I think that was another thing that scared the hell out of a bunch of politicians. So we had the Democratic Party governor, but also these right-wing Republicans, all, crying and moaning about it. And it scared them. And then they went on this, they kind of went on a counterattack of trying to create this narrative that wasn't true about what had happened.
Right, right, right. I wanted to, like, I read a lot of that, and I wanted to hear it just directly from you, like, what really
Yeah.
happened. And that makes a hell of a lot more sense to me.
Mhm.
But then they don't usually care about that, do they?
No, no.
So in the chat, one of the users there, Dr. Abinway, said, on the point about younger people getting in and the fact that they need to get a little more involved. Let's see here. It can be difficult because management might seem as an easy target. Advice on good starting roles that create involvement but aren't necessarily risky.
Right. I think the one thing that you can do is to really start building relationships with your coworkers. And in fact, you don't even have to mention the word union ever, you know, until you've built a foundation. And so what I mean by that is I think we've all been in jobs where we right away can tell somebody is a backstabber and a snitch and out for
Right.
themselves. Like almost instantly you recognize that,
Oh yeah.
and everyone sort of is a little bit wary of them. But I think the opposite is true too. You also notice people who go out of their way to help people, who kind of generally educate people about how things work, who try and have each other's back,
Yep.
and who kind of have an ethic of solidarity, if you will. And so I think trying to create that sort of um, that that framework of solidarity in your workplace, and also to kind of be a role model for how people should relate to each other, is really useful. And from there, you can start sort of building relationships and building trust. And then once you have that, you can start talking about organization. Um, but I do think that it's important to know that, once you have that going, actually being associated with a union can sometimes make you less of a target, because the bosses know that if they come at you, that they're going to have to deal with all this, support that you'll have.
Right.
So I think a lot of times people feel like, oh, I don't want to be a target, so I don't want to be associated with the union. But actually, at least in our workplaces where we do have an established union, you're if you're connected, if you're seen as somebody who people care about and is connected and knows their rights, they know you're not going to be easy to sort of bully or pick off. And
Yep.
I think that's an important point.
Cool. Cool. I love it. Anyone else in chat got anything else for us? We're just at that hour mark since we actually started live video. So we won't go too terribly much longer. But while I wait on that, is there anything you've got coming up? Like, are you working on anything new? Is there anything we should
Well,
know about? Anything we should be paying attention to?
yeah, if you don't mind, I'm gonna make a plug for one of the
Please do.
campaigns we're involved in right now, which is, and since you probably have people, who viewers and listeners who from all over the country, you should know that AT&T retail stores were for the most part unionized. But what AT&T has been doing is they've been using these third-party outsourcing ventures who use the same AT&T branding, the same store, and they've been flipping the stores from being unionized stores to being non-union stores, where
So
they
they
pay the
lease it out and
workers.
then they give them the rights to use the logos and the branding and whatnot, like some kind of a sub license or something.
Exactly.
That's horrible.
And it happens overnight, so that you'll walk into the store and you won't even notice anything's different, except there's a different face behind the counter. And so you can't even tell the stores apart from each other. So we're going to be now, in my opinion, that the CWA has been slow to respond to this, because they did this to like 500 stores in the last year or so, which is
Wow.
a huge amount of workers.
Yeah.
And what had once been these living wage unionized little strongholds in retail have now been turned into just something like Subway sandwich shop, only with cell phones, where people often have to work by themselves, which makes them vulnerable to, robberies and violence. They're getting paid much less for their base wage and their commission. Their benefits are much less, and they have, little to no rights
Hmm?
as workers. So what our local is doing is starting a campaign called Defend Our Jobs, where we're really going to push back on these attack on union jobs. And so if you know people that are working in the retail cell phone industry, please do get in
Yeah.
touch. We want to talk to them. And if there's AT&T stores in your area, or if you use AT&T, find out which stores are the union stores, support those, and then help the union in this fight.
I love it. I love it. Now, do you guys have a website up yet? Are you working on one?
Yeah, so you're always welcome to check out our Facebook and Twitter, CWA 7250. If you search those, you'll find us pretty easily. And we do have a website as well, also CWA7250.org. You'll get updates about that. But yeah, follow us on
I
social
put it in the
media,
chat
and
there.
you'll see kind of what our union's up to, and maybe hopefully a model of what a solidarity union can look like.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so on the Defend Our Jobs thing now, do you have any any course of action here. I mean,
Right.
if you get too loud, are they just going to do more, or do you have a way to fight back and get them to revert this process, or how does this
Yeah,
work?
so that's the big question because it feels a bit like we're up against a tidal wave, and
Right?
how do you fight a tidal wave? It's not an easy answer. So what I say though is that, well, we got to do something, and we got to start experimenting, and we got to do it fast, and we got to do it kind of hard. So I think that, a few places where AT&T is vulnerable. One is that they care a lot about their brand. They spend a ton of money advertising. If you watch TV or YouTube, you're going to see AT&T ads.
I
And
wish they cared
I
about
know,
their network too, though.
right, right, right. And so so I know that we just had a little fight in a suburb of St. Paul where they closed a store, and it was the only fully bilingual store in the state of Minnesota. Put uh, 5 or 6
Wow.
workers out, and would never be rehired. No more union jobs in that location. We had a nice little fight around that store. We got the city council to pass a resolution condemning what AT&T had done, and AT&T really, we didn't even know if they were paying attention to us, but then
Right.
come to find out that their big lobbyists had been calling the city council, had been sending emails, sending letters, and they really do care about that kind of stuff. So we just have to do that on a much bigger scale. We can't do it one little suburb at a time or something. We have to do
Right.
it kind of all across the country. And then, I mean, I think the other thing that we got to look at is that we've got to start organizing these non-union stores that they're creating, because then the incentive to do this flipping to the third party isn't worth it if we just come in and organize them. So we need to
Right.
be
Right.
aggressive in our organizing of those stores. And then finally, I'll just say we need to be prepared to take job action. There's no reason why telecom workers across the country should put up with, our wages, our benefits, our rights being attacked by this big profitable corporation. It's not about money. They're making billions of dollars. They made it all through this recession. They made it
Yeah.
all through the last recession. They're a very powerful company. It's not about them hurting for money. It's the fact that they, the dictates of capitalism, they have to keep increasing their profits. Profit or die is how they look at it.
Well, yeah,
So
I
we
mean,
just,
it's not like they're reinvesting it in proper 5G. I mean, they won a
right,
court battle to call their shitty kind of upgrade to 4G 5G, and in
right,
every actual external speed test, it was slower than the 4G LTE stuff. So, like, it's not like
that's
they
right,
invested in like a real network upgrade or anything.
right.
All that money went into the shareholders and board members' pockets.
Yeah, it's shameful, just like you said. And like, what if instead we had a society that really could, provide technology that was sustainable, that was connected to the needs of the earth, but also the needs of the people,
Yep.
and wasn't focused on this kind of like, crash and grab, kind of smash and grab type of capitalism that
Right.
AT&T is so good at.
So on the note of the actual like defend our jobs kind of setup, I don't see much on the main website right now.
Look for stuff soon though.
Okay, cool.
We've been winning some victories within our union in terms of getting the bigger parts of the union to get on board with it, and we hope to roll out something that'll look pretty sharp soon.
That's awesome. As soon as it is, just make sure I know. If I don't see it, I'll get it
Right.
out there. I'll make sure it goes.
All
I
right.
love it. I love it. I really appreciate you coming on, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's a nice
Yeah,
talk, and it's good to get to know you a little better.
right. This was great. And I mean, I do come out there all the damn time now. So maybe we can have dinner sometime one of these times I come
Sounds
out.
good.
But yeah. Don't go anywhere yet. I'm gonna kill the stream. We talk for a second, then we hang up everything. All
Okay.
right, everyone. This was a fun show. Everyone in the chat loves you, by the way. They've been saying thanks for coming on, or great guest, all that fun stuff. And in my other chat on Discord, they've been telling me to have more people like you on the show. So I'm hoping at some point when this really starts to ramp up, and I'm hoping it does, we can have you back to talk about
Sure.
progress on that.
Yeah, we could maybe bring some workers from the retail sector on
That'd
with
be
us for
amazing.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we can do rotating guests. I have a setup
Cool.
like a screen share that actually shows like up to 4 people. And we can
Sweet.
also do the thing where whoever's talking is shown, but we could bring as many people as you want on the show. I love it.
Cool.
All right, man, and I love all you fans. I love everything that's happened here. Like, subscribe, all the things you say, follow, whatever. I am going to hit the end button now. Good night, everyone.